Good morning, everyone. As requested, I'm going to cook some chocolate chip cookies this morning. And I wanted to try to get them cooked before it got so hot because it's too hot to have the oven going. So let me get my oven heating up. My recipe calls for the oven to be preheated at 375. I got my morning coffee here. That is so good first thing in the morning. Now, we've got to add our shortening, which I use the softened butter anyway. And we're going to put 2/3 cup of butter in there. I got a measuring cup. Probably what I got in my container is about 2/3 of a cup. Let's see. Yeah, I would say I'll go ahead and put the rest of this in this container in here just to be safe, because there's not that much. There's probably a half spoonful left in this container. And did I tell you these little tubs? They have two sizes of them. This is the smaller tub, and then you get a bigger one. This is usually the only one that I can afford to buy at one time, and it's 2 pounds, 13 ounces. And it makes a great flower pot to start seeds in, I found. So I'm probably going to hold on to my little container. Now, 2/3 cup shortening, and I'm just going to use some olive oil that's cooking olive oil. Oops. I'm going to mix in 1 cup of granulated sugar and 1 cup of brown sugar. I got to get my granulated sugar. Probably should have measured out my sugar before I don't have another measuring cup. Let's see. Well, you know what? I'll pour it right in there. It'll come out. There's 1 cup of white sugar. And then I'm going to get 1 cup of brown sugar. Yeah, and I keep my open sugars either in a jar or like white sugar I keep in the refrigerator. And that's just to keep the ants off of it. Because you know sugar just naturally attracts ants. They love sugar. So some people won't have a problem with that, but I do. Because no matter how clean you keep your house, if you got sugars to where ants can smell it, guess what? They're going to be in your house and they're going to be in your sugar. So I try to put everything in basically an airtight container. Yeah, that's got it. It's all going to be mixed up together anyway, so it doesn't matter. And I got 2 eggs that I'm going to put in there. Put your eggs and vanilla. Two teaspoons of vanilla. Let me find a teaspoon here. Where is the teaspoons when you need them? It's 1, 2. So basically, you put your sugars, your eggs, and your butter, and your cooking oil in there first and get it all mixed up. Like I said, I use the soft butter, so you don't have to melt it down. It just mixes right on up with all the other ingredients here. And I just basically stir it until I know all that butter is blended right in with all the sugar and everything. I don't have any clumps of butter. And it's not hard to do because that butter is real soft. Basically like that. Now, stir in remaining ingredients. Okay, I don't need the salt. I mean, I can put just a tiny bit of salt, but don't really need it since this is self-rising flour, but I'll put it in there anyway, just a dab, because I found it doesn't hurt. Now, you can add 12 ounces of semi-chocolate chip pieces, 2 packages of 6-ounce each semi-sweet chocolate. Well, you know, I didn't even pay attention, but I got one of the bags, and it's basically 11.5 ounces, so that's close enough. That's a ½ ounce away from 12 ounces right there, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm not going to put nuts in my chocolate chip cookies this time because I really prefer my chocolate chip cookies not to have nuts. I mean, you can put that cup in there if you want to, that's up to you. And then it calls for 3 cups of all-purpose flour, which I'm using self-rising flour. I always do if I can buy it. There's been a time when sometimes during the COVID pandemic that the shelves were actually out of self-rising flour, and all you had left was plain flour. But it's just as good. Just buy your plain flour, put your salt in it, put your baking soda in it, and you're good to go. And with self-rising flour, you just omit the baking soda and the salt, that's all. But you see, I usually put salt in mine anyway. And it says for a salt. My allergies. I was working in my garden by flashlight last night till about 3 o'clock. I was breaking dead plants off. I was putting compost tea to plants. Just doing stuff, you know, that normally I would do during the daytime, but it's just too hot out there during the day. And as I said, this little thing here is a half a cup. So I found if I round it like that, even though I got a hole, that's a half a cup. That's two cups. These little things take a lot of flour. That's 3 cups, and I'm going to put just a tiny bit more in, because I prefer to have a rounded cookie, if possible. Okay, checklist. I got shortening, butter, granulated sugar, brown sugar, 2 eggs, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, 3 cups of all-purpose flour with a little extra to make them softer. And then 12 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate, which is already in there. And I'm just basically going to mix this mixture up. And I've got to take a sip of coffee. This is my first cup of coffee, y'all. I'm not even awake yet. There's no telling how these cookies are going to turn out. Oh, that's so good. Y'all get you a cup of coffee while I'm making my cookies. And I've got a bigger spoon here that I can start using. And I don't use a plastic spoon because this cookie dough is kind of firm and you can't stir it with a plastic spoon. You'll end up breaking your plastic spoon. Might not even stir it with this. It's really not shaped right. It doesn't have the right type of handle. But it helps to have a metal spoon. Yeah, I'm going to go back to using my other one. Don't quite like this one too good. And I said I was going to wait to cooler weather to do this, but I said, oh well. I'll go ahead and make them today since I've got the stuff. Got all the ingredients. Go ahead and make them today and get it over with. I should have started them earlier, but I was asleep. I didn't get to bed till around 4 o'clock this morning. By the time I got my shower and got in the bed. So I slept late. I was tired. There, and as soon as you get all your flour, good gracious, that is stiff. Get all your flour mixed up in there. Got to get it to know one another. Oh man, that is some tough cookie dough. And I think about got it. Okay, it says ungreased baking sheet. I usually like to grease mine, but, and you're supposed to put them about 2 inches apart. I don't know if you can see that. Move my camera back a little bit. And my pans are old. They're discolored. You can tell they've been used. Now we're gonna drop them by rounded teaspoons. And go needing a teaspoon again. Always have a rounded tablespoon available. And they say to put it about 2 inches apart. I mean, that may not be 2 inches, I don't know, but I gotta use the pan I got, right? You know what? Why do I always make things difficult for myself? I should have moved this cookbook. And it's been ages since I've used this recipe to cook these, because I don't think I've cooked chocolate chip cookies since my kids lived at home when they were young. I mean, they're young now, but they're young adults. You know what I'm saying. My chocolate chips are jumping out. There's one. That's 12 cookies. Maybe I can get another 12 in here. Yeah, that was more than enough chocolate chips in there. Next time I'll have to try my hand at sugar-free because I've never made sugar-free. I don't know how they do that. Especially when you got the brown sugar and the white sugar both. How do you substitute brown sugar? I'm wondering. I'm going to have to research that. Yeah, I've never had to cook for a diabetic, and I know one of my subscribers is a diabetic. I may have more than one. I don't know. And I don't know. I may be making these cookies too big, but. We'll find out. Like I said, it's been years since I've cooked chocolate chip cookies. I've not cooked chocolate chip cookies since my kids were in school. Because usually if I cook anything for birthdays or anything like that, it's cakes. Cakes, cupcakes, that type of thing, not cookies. Ooh, that's a lot of chocolate chips in that one. In fact, I'm going to have to take some of them off because they're just laying on the pan. And there, that's 12 more, so that's 2 dozen cookies right there. And I got to get this dough off my fingers. So, and that's only half the cookie dough, y'all. We're going to have about, well, that's 2 dozen, these pans. We're going to have about 4 or 5 dozen cookies. Now, we got to cook those for about 10 minutes. So let's see what time it is. Yeah. About 8 to 10 minutes is what the cooking instructions calls for. So it does not take long to cook cookies once you get that oven preheated. And usually cookies is what I use for desserts. Being single, sometimes I just buy a little bag of chocolate chip cookies or something like that just for myself. So here I'm going to have about 5 dozen cookies to eat or do something with, y'all. So we can chat while those are cooking. I don't have any more big cookie sheets like that, so what I'm going to have to do is wait till those cook. I get them off of there, off the pans, get them into a container, and then we'll put the rest of them in. We're going to see how many cookies this thing makes, you know? I'm just glad it doesn't take but 8 to 10 minutes to bake them, because that way I don't have to have this oven on for hours this morning. Yeah, I found with this water restriction, they have like borrowed water, or they're buying water that's been treated or purified or whatever they do to it from another company. So we're getting water from 2 water companies right now. Their water's coming right through our lines with our own water company. And there is so many blooming chemicals in that water. You don't want to water your yard with a garden hose because the chemicals are so strong in that water right now, it'll take your breath. I mean, it's happened to me the first couple of times I started trying to water when they started buying water from this other water company till they get the parts to fix whatever it is they need to fix for our own company. I was standing over one of my 5-gallon buckets getting ready to fill it up so I could keep it with compost tea. And I tell you what, the vapors from that water that flew up in my face that I was breathing took my breath. That's how strong the freaking chemicals are in this water. I'll be so glad when we can do away with this other water company and just go back with our own water company and they can supply the water we need. Because our water company that we always have used does not have that many chemicals in the water, or it's a different chemical. Because it don't take your breath when you try to water your garden or you fill a bucket with it. Right now, you can't breathe if you're standing over a 5-gallon bucket trying to fill it up with water hose. You cannot breathe. It will take your breath. And if there's that many chemicals in that water, I don't want any part of it. I tried watering my plants with the garden hose one time, and because I was real tired and I was real careful not to waste any water, and my plants started dying. So I no longer water with the water hose. I'll take my bucket, I'll take my compost tea, I will water my garden with it. I can water in the morning and in the evening on my watering day. If I run out of compost tea, I'll fill that bucket up that day and I'll leave it sit all day long before I water with it again. The best thing to do is fill it up, wait a couple of days until those chemicals evaporate out of that water, and then water your plants with it so it doesn't burn your plants up. It will literally kill your plants. It will fry them. Now, some people say, oh, the chemicals in the water ain't going to hurt your plants. Oh, yes, it will. I've had it happen. So it's good that they restrict you from watering with the water hose, because you don't need to water with this water right now with the water hose anyway, because you're just going to kill your plants with it. It's like spraying plant poison on them. Weed killer or something. That's one reason I went ahead and bought another one of those water catchment containers. This one is 32 gallons. I thought my other was 22, but they're only 20 gallons each. So from now on, if I can find them, I'm getting the 32. I'm going to end up replacing my 5-gallon buckets that I keep compost tea in with a 32-gallon container and use my buckets for planting as I need it. I'm not adding anything to my garden now. I'm trying to take care of what I've got out there, keep it alive. And I found the best way to do it is let your water sit in a bucket for several days. Keep it covered because you don't want mosquitoes. But don't water with a water hose. If you're with a water company and you got good water, you don't have these chemicals in it like that, go for it. But the water they're giving us right now, I don't think is fit for human consumption. It's got too many freaking chemicals in it. If it takes your breath just to water fill a 5-gallon bucket up, what in the world are all those chemicals doing to your body if you drink that water? I mean, I know I use it because I make my coffee with it and all that, but at least it's put up to like a sterilization mode when it goes in my microwave before I make my coffee with it. And if I cook with it, it's going to be sterilized in a pot before I consume it. But I tell you, it's downright scary. Downright scary. And I don't mean to be preaching, but hey. I tell you what, you got water that you're paying for, and you can't even water your plants with it until you leave it sit in a bucket for several days. That's getting pretty bad. Something needs to be done. I don't want that other company's water coming in my house. And I'll be so glad when we can do away with this other water company. But what I'm afraid is going to happen is they may not end up with any alternative but to keep this other water company, and we're going to end up with this chemical water that's not fit to drink. I mean, I always loved living here because I knew we had the best water here of anybody around this area. Even the city water out here is on the company that has all the chemicals. You can boil a pot of that water and you got white granules in the bottom of your pot, and it's pure chemicals. You can use a coffee maker, the old-timey percolators or pots like that, and you don't want to drink the last cup of coffee that comes out of there because it's white sand in the bottom. Pure chemicals. I learned that working in one of the stores in town. A lady, the first day I went to work, she come walking in there with a gallon jug of water. She said, "Yeah, I bring my water out here. You don't want to drink the water that comes out of that tap, and you don't want to make coffee with it." And she took me to the break room and she showed me. She said, "Look, the other people make coffee with this tap water, and I want to show you what's in the bottom of this coffee pot." It was pure white sand from the chemicals that come out of the water when they made that pot of coffee. So she said, no matter who makes it, you never want to drink the last cup because you'll get pure sand in your cup. That made a believer out of me. So that's the water company that we've got supplying half our water right now. And I don't want that water company. And I don't mean to be on here preaching about it, but it's a fact of life. You got to be careful what you put in your body. If all those chemicals are that strong, what's it doing to your insides when you're drinking all those chemicals? People say, "Oh, well, it's safe." Well, you don't know it's safe. You know what they tell you. I don't know. It's been in here. But they don't seem like they're cooking like they should. I'm going to leave them in there a few more minutes. Yeah, anytime I've got water that takes my breath to smell the vapors coming off the top of it, I'm kind of weary of that stuff. Don't want to. I do not want to burn my cookies, but I'm not sure they're quite done. I mean, there may be. No, I'm going to put them in there a few more minutes. I'm not trusting it. And I may have needed to raise that rack up a little bit. That might be one thing. Whew. It's hot in here with this oven going, y'all. I know the pan had to heat up a little bit, so we'll see. I've been looking for these things forever, And all they are just little plastic covers, stretch covers, that go on the top of like a jar. Say you got a jar that you need a lid for. Look at that. And it's got little pull tabs on it, so it fits your jar. It fits my evaporated milk can, so when I open a can of milk and I go to use it, I've always been looking for something that I can cover it with. And I found these, and I said it works. The smallest one works perfect on a evaporated milk can, to put a cover on it, you know, when you have it in the refrigerator, when you just use enough of it to put in your coffee every morning. It makes a great little cover. And it comes in several different sizes. And I got them on Temu, Temu, that website that I guess it's from China, where you order all this stuff. But these are really neat. I got several different sizes of them. I mean, one package gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sizes. This is the smallest one. And they go on up to a bigger one that you can cover a bowl with. The small ones, you can cover small bowls. These are the neatest things. I am so glad I went on there and found these, because they're cheap. They're only a couple of dollars. But I tell you what, they're well worth it. Now, I don't know if you can wash them in your dishwasher, so don't quote me on that, but they're well worth it, even if you have to wash them by hand. Whew. Now they got to cool in that pan just a tiny bit before I can get them out of there. You don't want them to cool much, but they need to cool some. And I gotta find me a container to put them in. Oh, let's see. Everything jumping out of me, out of the cabinet at me, trying to get stuff. That's the drawback of being a shorty. Unless you got a step ladder or footstool, or you climb up in a chair. I'm gonna use this, I think, just to store them in temporarily, because I know it'll be big enough. Well, I'm Butterfingers this morning, y'all. That's what you get when you get up and you start baking and you haven't had your morning coffee yet. There's no telling what you're going to do. Now, let's see if we can possibly... Yeah, let them cool just enough that you can slide them off of the cookie sheet without them breaking or getting misshaped. And if you'll wait just a few minutes, a couple of minutes like I just did when you take them out, they'll do that. You'll be able to slide that spatula under them real easy and get them out. And I'm curious to see how brown they are on the bottom. Yeah, see, they're pretty brown on the bottom. They're not burnt, but they are nice and brown. And I know I've got my camera at a different angle this morning. I didn't want to have to keep moving the camera, because it messes up the video when you got to keep moving the camera. That might be an idea next Christmas. Instead of making a cake or cupcakes or something like that to take to my sons, I might just make a batch of chocolate chip cookies or something. I like to make my spice cupcakes and take them to my sons because they make a great breakfast muffin as well. And there, that's cool enough now that I can wash it off a little bit. Let's see, where's my sponge? Because I don't want any of that left in the pan. Because if you leave any of that in the pan that was from there on that first batch, it'll just end up burning. And it'll ruin your second batch of cookies. So I always like to take the sponge and just go around and get all the little crumbs that stuck to the pan when you got your cookies off of it. And I know my pans are old, but you know, they're all right. They bake just as good as, they're like seasoned pans. They're not the non-stick pans, but they're seasoned by now as much as I've used them over the years, just like a cast iron frying pan. So usually stuff doesn't stick to them like they would normally, you know. Everybody thinks they gotta have non-stick everything nowadays, but just let your pan get kind of seasoned and it'll be a non-stick pan for you. Whew. Go ahead and see if I can get this other batch of cookies in here. Because remember, we've already got 2 dozen cooked. Let's see how many more dozen we're going to get out of this. And I'm trying not to make them too awfully big. You might have to kind of shape them up a little bit as far as your chocolate chips go, because some of my cookies have a whole clump of chocolate chips in one side. Like this one is just full of them. Oh my goodness. That's okay. I don't think you can have too much chocolate, can you? And I love this Betty Crocker cookbook that I've got. I've had it for so many years. Because most of the time the recipes are real simple, but they're good recipes. But if you'll take 1 rounded teaspoon of cookie dough, to each cookie you'll end up with cookies basically even in size. They'll all be similar. You won't have a great big one and then a little tiny one. Just try to get about the same amount on your spoon each time. And the recipe calls that you can substitute your chocolate chips for peanuts. Need to move that over a tiny bit. Seem like I'm getting them closer together, not too far apart, I mean. Not close together, but too far apart. Six. Well, maybe not. Maybe I thought I was getting them too far apart, but maybe not. Ooh, got too much dough there. Need to mix up some of them chocolate chips. I got a whole pile of them in one little section. Yeah, one of those 11.5-ounce bags of chocolate chips are plenty big enough. That's plenty of chocolate chips for your cookies. If you make just one recipe, that 11-ounce bag is plenty big enough. I've got so many chocolate chips in this one, I don't know. But hey, y'all, I love chocolate. Y'all, I get my fingers in my dough. Sometimes with cookies you can't help it. I like to shape them a little bit to make sure they're rounded when I put the dough in there, not so they're not so scattered out. You know what? I think I'm going to be able to get another row because I'm going to have cookie dough left over and I don't want to throw any of it away. I want to bake it all. So I'm just going to move it over so I'll get, instead of 12 cookies in here, I might be able to get 15 maybe. I know most of you say I should take a spoon and get the dough off with the spoon. But you know what? It's easier to handle it with your fingers. And my fingers are clean. I'm still gonna have dough left. I might have to take the other pan and move some of them too. Or maybe add some to some of these, I don't know. Because I think this recipe makes about 6 dozen cookies, depending on how big you make them. Like playing with Play-Doh. Now let's see about this other pan. Maybe we can get another row in here. Because like I said, I want to use all my cookie dough. I don't want to have leftover dough. At least 2 more cookies in here anyway. Now I got them mostly even, but I could have been a little bit better on my measuring. So I've got 2, 4, 6, about 6.5 dozen cookies. So let's get these in there and get them a-cooking. Because I really want to get this oven turned off. Let's see, that's 130. Okay. Yeah, I think next time I bake them, I'm going to move my rack up a little higher. I think the cookies need to really be cooked on the top rack, not the middle one. But you know your own oven. You know, you can determine which rack you want to put your pan on to cook your cookies. I'm going to go ahead and get some of this put up. didn't need to spray. Did not need to spray at all. But they're looking good. They're still a little hot, but we'll wait and see what happens with our second batch. And I've still got a half a bowl of walking onions that I've got to plant. And I think what I'm going to do is try to get out there and take all those little pots from around the bird bath that everything is dyed in, rework those pots, put more compost and stuff like that in them, and try to get some clay dirt. I know the ground is so hard and dry, I doubt I'll be able to dig anywhere, but I really need some clay dirt in there to hold moisture, a little bit anyway. And I think I'm going to use those pots to replant some walking onions, or any other pots that I've got in the yard that I don't have anything planted in right now. Or if I had something planted in it and the heat killed it, I'm going to use those pots to put my walking onions in. Because as much as I've planted already, I've still got this many little walking onions to plant. I mean, that's a lot of little walking onions right there. That's probably close to $50 to $75 or more worth of walking onion starts right there to plant. And I'm definitely not going to let them go to waste. I can use onions to cook with next year and not have to worry about buying them. Yeah, and I keep this pan here to put scraps in. But I also kept the lid there on that to keep them from drying out till I get ready to plant them. So there's no telling what you're going to see on my counter from time to time. You'll see seeds drying. You'll see my garlic that I harvest because I leave it there and grab it to cook with. My walking onions now because I've not been able to get out there and finish planting all of them. You'll see my pan that I keep my food scraps in to go in my buckets, my compost tea buckets. There's just no telling what you're going to see. Because y'all, this is a working kitchen. My kitchen is not just a showroom, it's a working kitchen. And that turmeric stained my bowl. I had stored some of that leftover yellow rice in that little bowl. And that turmeric started coloring the stain in the bowl yellow. Jar mop up, I need it for my coffee mugs to clean them. It's about the only thing I can get down in there that I can really clean the inside of them with. And I haven't been able to find another one. It's about time to buy a new one. But all of them you see in the stores now are some kind of a plastic stuff. Yeah, I find it so much easier just to keep your dishes halfway washed up while you're cooking, rather than to leave them all at the end and have it all to do at one time. That way I'm not overpowered by a whole kitchen full of dirty dishes at the end of my cooking experience. Woo, that water's hot. But if you want a good chocolate chip cookie recipe, this is it. That's why I love Betty Crocker cookbooks. They always have such good recipes. Tried and true recipes. Whew. Couple more minutes and they'll be done. And I can turn this oven off. Yeah, if you're young and just starting out, if you can get your hands on a Betty Crocker cookbook, that is going to be the most valuable thing you'll ever have in your kitchen. Because like I said, recipes are not written in stone. You can always alter them. If it calls for peanuts, put walnuts. If it calls for walnuts, put peanuts, or put pecans, or put anything else. Put raisins instead of nuts. You don't have to just stick with what exactly the recipe stage you has to put in there. You can always alter things. You can always substitute. As long as you keep your main ingredients, you know, like your flour, your cooking oil, your butter, stuff like that, your main ingredients. But anything you add, like your chocolate chips, your nuts, your raisins, any of that stuff is interchangeable. I mean, you don't have to just stick with what the recipe calls for. Put something in there you want in there. Like these chocolate chip cookies, I could have put chopped up candied fruit in these cookies and made fruit cookies out of them. Yeah, you don't have to just go, or instead of putting chocolate chips in there, the dark chocolate, you could put white chocolate, any kind of nuts, any kind of chopped candied fruit. You can substitute with anything. And you don't even have to put anything in your cookies. You can just make the plain recipe. Don't add any nuts, no raisins, no nothing, no fruit. Just cook a plain cookie. And it's still good. It is still good, my friends. And I'm going to watch them because I don't want them to burn. That was one reason I ended up having to get a new stove. I mean, my old stove worked, but it was ancient. It looked horrible, the one that was in this house when it first was built. And you couldn't adjust the temperature correctly. It was either too hot or it was too cool. If I turned it up on the setting that the recipe called for, it would usually burn the bottom of everything. So I'm glad I ended up getting this stove a few years ago, because the temperature gauge is more accurate. I don't know how long we've been on here. I don't want an extremely long video, but I don't, you know, I want to let you see what I'm doing. Don't those look good? That's 24 cookies there already. And see, the bottom of them are brown, but they're not burnt. And that's what I look out for. I don't want my cookies burnt. I want them brown but not burnt. See, like that. And it's so easy to burn them. Turn that oven off and let those cool just a tiny bit so I can get them out of the pan. And I think I'm going to have to fix me another cup of coffee. Because I'm going to eat me a chocolate chip cookie or two. I mean, I don't want to spoil my lunch, but let's see. I can probably move that over here. Put a towel under it so it doesn't, I need to wash that towel. So it doesn't burn my countertop. It'll cool off quicker there too. I don't know what I want for lunch. I mean, I'm not eating breakfast yet, so my lunch is going to be my breakfast and my lunch together. And see, this is what I want to show you. This is the smallest little stretch cover. Fits your can perfectly. Now, how's that for a cover for an evaporated milk can? Because when I open this, I'm going to have basically a whole can of milk left that's going to go in the refrigerator. And that gives me a great little cover to go on it to keep anything from falling in the holes, you know. I don't have to worry about anything getting in there. So, but yeah, that's a great little thing. And that's from Temu, T-E-M-U, that website where they advertise everywhere, where people are ordering all kind of stuff. And their prices are pretty good. Yeah, I keep my sugar in my refrigerator, this white sugar. Because like I said, out here, if you don't put it in an airtight container, the ants will find it. Because I guess in this Texas heat and dryness, there's not much food that they can find. So I tell you what, if there's a drum, just a crumb on your counter, you're going to have tons of ants. They will find it, I'll guarantee you. I need another teaspoon. Where's my teaspoon? I've got a divider in here, but I've got so many knives and forks and spoons and all that kind of good stuff that the divider doesn't do any good. And I don't like to get rid of anything as far as that is concerned, because you never know when you're going to need it. Yeah, and I know you probably say it's too hot to drink coffee, but since I started back drinking coffee, I've got to have my coffee. I love my coffee. I spilt milk. And I like to clean the top of my can off too. I don't like that milk to dry on the top. And there you go. I got my covered can to put in my refrigerator with that little cover from Temu or whatever they call it. And it works as good on a little small bowl too. I mean, they were designed for small bowls, jars, anything that size that you need a lid for, basically. And it's got to cool just a tiny bit. Gotta took my cookies out. So I've got 2 dozen there, 3 dozen, 4 dozen. I've got 4.5 dozen cookies. And if I'd have made them just a tiny bit smaller, I would have had like 5 dozen. Just depends on how big you make your cookies. See, they come out fairly easy even if you don't have a non-stick pan. And I like to stagger them when I put them in there. That way the air gets under the bottom and that helps cool them off. See, the bottom is kind of a brown, but it's not burnt. You don't want to burn your cookies, that's for sure. If I'd have made them all about that size, it probably would have been better. They all would have been, I mean, I'd have got my 5 dozen. I have a tendency to go big on my cookies, so, but that's a good size, I think. That's a good size cookie. Get in there. My chocolate chip fell out of the bottom of it. We'll just push it right back in there. And I probably needed a metal one of these spatulas to go under it, but this will work okay. You just have to be careful. See, I did not grease my pan either, and this is not a non-stick cookie sheet. It's just a regular metal cookie sheet. Yep, I gotta clean that towel. Tell it's been used because it's dirty. Cooking debris all over it. But there you go, guys. How's that for chocolate chip cookies? And they're still a little warm, so they're not completely cooled off, but look at that. Kind of doughy. But, you know, they're not going to be crunchy hard, hopefully. In a few days they might, but Right now they're still a little warm, so they come apart real easy. Take a bite. That's pretty good. Pretty good for homemade chocolate chip cookies. Even better. Even better when they're getting good and cold and not warm. But they're good hot too. Cook y'all some chocolate chip cookies. You'll have enough cookies for a while. Unless you got a big family, and then they're going to be gone in a heartbeat. You got 4 or 5 kids around, they're going to be gone. I promise you. So with that, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I love each and every one of my subscribers. I'm so glad you could come in and watch my videos and take the time out of your busy day to watch my videos. But try this recipe. It makes really good chocolate chip cookies. And I'm sure it's even better if you put some nuts in there. But I just didn't want to add nuts to mine today. Or raisins. Yeah, raisins are good. Raisins are real good to put in chocolate chip cookies. So go crazy with your cookies, y'all. Make you some chocolate chip cookies. Add you some raisins. Add you some nuts. Add your chocolate chips. Make you some really good chocolate chip cookies. You'll be glad you did. So, like I said, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I love all of you. Please like, share, subscribe to my videos. Tell all your friends, your family to like, share, and subscribe to my videos. Y'all have a blessed day, and I'll see you on my next one. Bye now.